Heart at the Hazbin Hotel, Chapter 30. You don't take what rightfully belongs to the radio demon so easily. When you mess with the deer, you get more than his antlers. Alastor finds out what's on Angel's phone, and what he discovers sets him into a rage of fury and revenge. It's time to save Heart, no matter what. Let's find out what's on that phone. All I can say is Alastor isn't going to like it. Not one bit. Warning for this chapter: sexual actions, violence, and slight gore that will take place during this chapter. Anyway, here we go. Chapter 30. The Radio's Fury. Third person point of view. Alastor slowly took the phone out of the shaking spider demon's hands. What was Angel freaking out about? He was almost worried about what he was showing him. Once Alastor took the phone, Angel went and ran over to Russ. The snake demon took his boyfriend into his arms and just held him as he cried. Alastor wasn't sure how to work these future devices, but he has watched Heart use hers before, so he knew a little from watching. He unlocked the phone, and it was still on the video Angel was watching. Alastor slid the bar to start the video from the beginning. Everyone went around the couch and over Alastor's shoulder to look as well. He pressed play. At first, the deer demon was appalled at the sight that it was a porn video Angel was showing him. He was just about to yell at him when he froze in shock at the demon on the bed. No, it couldn't be. He didn't want to believe what he was seeing. Was this a joke? If so, it was a horrible one to play on him. It was Heart, laying on her hands and knees on the bed. He noticed that she was tied up this way. Her wings were tied together as well. They didn't want her to get anywhere. Alastor noticed she was naked. His anger spiked a moment from seeing this. What was happening? She would never just be naked in front of someone, let alone a camera. It made her uncomfortable. Alastor didn't know what this was. Alastor heard a laugh come from the video. The camera swung around to show the two demons he was hating the most right now, Vox and Valentino. Alastor let out a radio-sounding growl. "Well, hello there," Vox started with a wide grin. "We have a little dog here that's been very bad." Vox went out of view of the screen and a smack was heard, followed by a yelp. Alastor knew it was Heart. Alastor started to feel his blood boil. How dare he touch her like that? Valentino laughed. "Yes, but Alastor, our dear friend, we want to thank you for this little gift. Although, if you want it back, it's not going to be the same when returned." Valentino then walked off screen, chuckling. Alastor was confused on what was going on. All he knew was that he was right about them kidnapping Heart. He was glad he was right, but angered that it was true. He just wasn't expecting this. He wanted to jump up and storm out of the room, but he felt frozen in place still from the scene taking place in front of him on the phone. His mind going a mile a minute with everything that was going on, all his emotions going through his head. "We have a show in store for you, Mr. Radio Star," Vox said with slight venom in his voice. "Here's your entertainment for the day." Vox turned the camera, and then Valentino was there, naked now, and had joined Heart on the bed. Alastor felt his anger rise. No, this wasn't happening. How dare he bed her in front of him? Val ran his claws down Heart's back and looked as if he was doing it too deep. Blood fell and went everywhere on the bed. Alastor was expecting Heart to scream from the pain, but instead, she moaned. Val then went and bit her shoulder. Again, it looked like he was biting her too hard, but she still moaned. Alastor felt his heart drop. No, there was no way she was enjoying this. He was doing everything too hard. Alastor would never like this with her. He was rough, sure, but not like this. He knew her limits, and this was way too much for her. All Alastor could think was, why was she enjoying it? Alastor continued to watch as the blue demon bit and scratched at his love on the bed, and looked as though she was enjoying it. Alastor felt his heart almost break from it all. His mind was clouded with the emotions of betrayal. He felt tears form and fall down his face a moment. How could she do this? Enjoy another man's company besides his own. She said she would never do this. Not to him. Then, what Valentino did next, he didn't want to see happen in front of him like this. Alastor's anger then spiked through the roof then. His power started to rise as he watched. How dare he do this to her? She was his prey. Only he was allowed to do this to her. He felt the predator side of him start to peek through. Vox was the one handling the camera, and he went closer and went to Hart's face. Alastor was expecting her to be in pain, but she looked to be enjoying it. No, she couldn't have been like this. Alastor looked closer and saw that she had tears just falling down her face, and she had a pink tint to her purple eyes. Alastor then connected it. Val was controlling her, making her act like this. It may seem he was doing this because she wanted him to, but it was all fake. She was scared and in pain. The camera pulled away and Vox showed off all the bite marks and scratches that now littered her body. Alastor noticed there were other bite marks and scratches on her body. Faded, but still there. More than what Val had just done. Alastor knew that they weren't his because he hadn't left any on her lately. He wanted her to heal from the past ones he gave her. That meant one thing. They did this more than once to her. Vox pulled the camera away again. Alastor's anger was now almost to its max. Everyone had backed away from him. They were afraid of what he would do. They were also worried. They knew that this wouldn't end well. They had seen what had happened on the video as well. They were feeling so bad for both of them. The space around Alastor was distorting, and his static was almost starting to be ear-deafening. His eyes glowed, and he just felt rage. The video still went on. How long was this? How long did they make her suffer? How dare they do this to her? Forcing her to take part in this deed, using her like a doll just for this, to get to him. You want your gift back now, Alastor? He heard Vox say behind the camera. Now that she's tainted? Vox then laughed more. She is no longer marked as your own. That pushed Alastor now. His powers went off the charts. His demon form and now full force. Voodoo symbols floated around him. His radio static just laid heavy. His antlers had now grown big on top of his head. His claws grew long. He couldn't watch any more of this disgusting display. He crushed the phone in his hands. In one moment, he threw the phone into the fire as he let out a horrible, loud screech of white noise. He dashed off past everyone and burst out of the hotel, making the doors fly off. His shadow seemed to lift off the walls and follow behind him. He was enraged now. They had pushed him to his limits. Charlie was scared to see him like this, but watched him rush out. Alastor! She called out behind him. It didn't matter, because he was already gone. They all looked at each other and ran towards the door, or what was left of them. When they got there, they heard screams coming from the city. They looked over and saw Alastor disappear behind a building. He was now floating in the air as his shadows followed behind him. They noticed a few things were now on fire, were following demons as they screamed. He was now on a rampage. "What do we do?" Angel asked out loud with worry. "We have to go," Nifty said as she started to run up the street. "We have to follow him. We know where he's going," Huss said as well, and ran after Nifty. "He's going to need our help, guys. Let's go," Charlie said and ran after the other two. The group looked at each other and then ran off to follow. They knew which way Alastor was going because he was leaving chaos behind him. Cars were ablaze, his shadows going after demons. One shadow was even eating one. Blood was soon covering the streets and on buildings. Windows were shattered from the sheer volume of Alastor's static noise. Charlie got sent back to the times when Alastor first arrived in Hell. The same carnage he was leaving behind was almost similar. She felt bad for him at this moment. Alastor had just watched the one woman he had ever fallen for. When he finally found the courage to open his heart to, bed, and wanted to marry, just get violated by another man. By an enemy as his, nonetheless. So, she could only imagine how heartbroken he was, as well as how enraged he must have been to do all this. It would be hard to stop him now. Vaggie ran next to Charlie. She wasn't ready to fight, but knew the situation could not be avoided now. As much as she hated Alastor, she was feeling bad about Hart. Although Vaggie was stubborn and didn't want to join in this, she did it to follow Charlie and protect her. At the same time, she wanted to make sure Hart would be safe and back to them. Husk and Nifty ran close behind Alastor. They were laughing a little and seemed to be having fun from the carnage. It was different for them. They would follow Alastor into chaos without thought. They were his friends, and they have experienced his times before. They enjoyed a little fun now and then as well. Lizzie ran fast after Alastor. Her heart was pounding in her ears. She was pissed. She might not have a demon form like Alastor's, but she was still enraged enough to turn into it. She wasn't that impressive in her demon form. She looked like a werewolf and had horns grow out from the top of her head and curled around her ears slightly. Lizzie was not happy when she watched the video. They hurt her sister. They broke her. Now all she wanted to do was break them. Koda was following behind Lizzie, trying to keep in pace with her. Even with her in a demon form, he was still able to keep up. He honestly didn't want to turn into his form. He was almost afraid to in front of Lizzie. He had never done so before for her. Not really in front of anyone, really. Once he got into the real fighting, then he would. But now Alastor was doing all the work for them. Koda was angered by the video that those two scumbags would stoop that low. Never in his life would he stand for that. He felt bad for Alastor. Not that he blamed the guy. He was on a rampage full of anger and he just wanted to save her. Russ was following along behind the others. He had transformed to his full demon form. He mainly just looked like a Naga. His lower half was a snake tail, while he kept his upper body the same. Russ was just as enraged by that video. Hart was someone he found to be a friend, someone he had a crush on at one point. Even so, he always had the need to protect her as well. This was seriously a low blow, and Russ wasn't going to have any of it. Not to Hart. She didn't deserve that. Although he realized he might have to buy Angel another phone. Poor Angel. He didn't even have time to think before they all rushed off. Luckily for him, Russ had let him tag along on his back. His mind was still racing. Why Val? Why did he have to send it to him? Of all people. He didn't want to see that. It was too horrible. Angel knew that Valentino was a dirtbag. But this put a whole new level to it, and it really sickened him. After today, he honestly didn't even want to go back to work for him. Not again. Valentino may have hurt him, but to do this to his friend, this was too far. Hart's point of view. They dragged me off the bed. Literally. It was more like forcefully dragging, though. I was still chained up, so they took me by the chains that were around my wrists and pulled me off the bed. I fell off beside the bed onto my side. The effects of Valentino's control had finally worn off. I just wish it was after they put me back on the pole. I was still bleeding from the scratches and bites. All I felt was pain, and I was feeling a fire form from the wounds. My muscles hurt, and I ached all over. I still had tears falling down my face, and I had a sob stuck in my throat. I just laid there a moment. I felt a pull on the chains as I got dragged against the carpet that was by the bed. My blood smeared the white carpet as I was dragged. "Get the fuck up!" I heard Vox demand. I tried to do as told and stood about halfway before I fell back down onto my stomach. I then felt a foot on my back and then the weight of someone standing on me. I let out a yell from the pain. I glanced up and saw Vox standing over me. He reached down and grabbed me roughly by my horns. I let out a yell from the action. "I said stand up!" Vox exclaimed as he pulled me up from the ground. I stood with the strength I could muster. I couldn't even find balance before he threw me, and when I landed, I was by the pole they had tied me to the last few days. I grabbed onto the pole and managed to pull myself up and lean my back against it. Blood smudged along the ground and onto the pole as well. I felt lightheaded as I tried to stand there. Vox walked up to me and grabbed me by the throat. I felt my breath stuck. "Next time we won't be so easy on you." My eyes went wide. Next time? Oh God, no. I couldn't take any more of this. I was tired of this torture and of the pain, of being used like a doll or a board game piece. I just wanted it to end. Vox then laughed and let go of me. Although, I'm excited to see how Alastor reacts to the little video we sent him. I stared at the TV demon. What was he talking about? No, they didn't. Did they really video me getting violated by Val and send it to Alastor? Oh God, I can only imagine how he reacted to that. I had a feeling it wouldn't be good. Vox took chains and tied me back up to the pole. My curiosity was too much. What video? I was then afraid I asked. Vox leaned down with a grin. "Oh, you were definitely out of it then," he laughed. "We made a little video and sent it to that little dear of yours. I'm sure he'll be surprised," he said as he grabbed my chin. "That was a mistake," I growled at him in anger. Vox squinted his eyes and mused. "Oh, tell me how," Vox asked with a purr. "He doesn't like when people touch me in that way you just did. He'll rip you to shreds," I said with a smirk. "Let's see him try." Vox let go of my chin roughly, scratching me in the process. Vox turned and walked out of the room, turning the lights off in the process as he closed the door behind him, leaving me in the dark. He locked the door behind him. Val had already left after he was done with me. That all I was good for. Being his toy. Now I realized that they were only doing this to me to get to Alastor. The bastards. I hung my head down with a sigh. I was glad it was over. For now. I'm sure that scientist will be in here soon. All he will do is poke at me again, doing whatever testing he needed from me. I wanted to just go home. Forget these last few days happened. I wanted to just lay in bed with Alastor wrapped around me in safety. To be relaxed and calm, wrapped in warmth. God, a hot bath even sounded nice to me right now. I just felt so gross and disgusting from the last few days. About everything. It made me wonder if Alastor would still accept me after all this. I wasn't just his anymore, and that made me almost upset. What would he think of me? How would he react? Would he still love me? I don't even know if he would want to make love to me again after all this. Of course, for myself, I don't know how I'll be after this experience. I just want it out. I continued to cry. Alastor. I watched my tears mixed with my blood that still laid on the floor. I was so weak and dizzy. All these activities had me in pain. All of me was hurting. I felt my stomach hurting me the most. Who even knows what the weird serum that scientist was injecting me with was doing to me? I didn't feel good. This had me all scared. I had to close my eyes, rest, but I didn't want to. I tried to fight it all, but soon darkness consumed me. Third person point of view. Vox walked out of the room and down the hall. He laughed as he walked. He wasn't expecting Alastor to come here. The deer demon hated this place. They'd play him like a fiddle with this plan. Maybe send him another video tomorrow, too. He'd play into their hands. Vox didn't know how wrong he was. When he walked past a window, he saw a view of the city from how high up he was. Then he saw it. Fire, chaos, and destruction not far off into the city. He saw shadows up in the sky. He watched a few more moments, and then he noticed the lights of the buildings start to flicker. What the hell was going on there? He got closer to the window. Then he saw the purpose of the chaos in the city round a corner, and was now down the road from the studio. The face he saw made him freeze in fear. Oh, fuck me, Vox said as his eyes went wide. He ran. He needed to find Valentino. Who he saw outside was someone he wasn't expecting. He ran until he got to Valentino's main office and ran in. He swung the door open and slammed it shut behind him. The blue demon jumped in surprise from the action. He turned to the TV demon with a growl. Vox! What the fuck are you? He was cut off by Vox running up to him and grabbing him by his coat. He's coming! Vox yelled at him. Ho! Valentino growled as he ripped the demon's hand off his coat. We were wrong, Val. Very wrong. He's coming here, Vox exclaimed. Damn it, Vox! Who? Valentino asked as he stood up from the chair and grabbed the demon by his shoulders. The lights of his office flickered. They heard static fill the air. The two overlords froze for a moment. Val had a boombox in the corner of his office. He heard it come to life, and white noise filled the room. Now he knew exactly who Vox meant. Oh, shit, Valentino whispered as he let go of Vox and looked toward the boombox. Then they both heard a voice come through the white noise. It was scary, deep, and serious. You'll both pay for your lies for what you did. They underestimated him. That was for sure. Valentino felt panic. He reached under his desk and hit a button. Red lights started flashing through his office. He turned to Vox sternly. This is an alert. Get everyone outside this building, now! Valentino pushed the demon away from him. Get every demon willing to fight outside, now! Vox caught his footing from when Valentino pushed him and ran out of his office screaming, Fuck! The group managed to keep up with Alastor. They were surprised when he stopped, though. He stood a good way away in front of the studio. He was just standing it. He just looked up at it. He was not floating off the ground anymore and stood on his 2 feet. He didn't want to cause any more trouble when he entered. The radio demon wanted to see if the overlords inside would just hand her over. Part of him just wanted to ram into the building, but he held back. His shadows were still running amok in the city, but that was okay with him. He was letting them have their fun. Everyone had formed a line behind Alastor. They looked at him, all afraid, into the building. Charlie was brave enough to walk forward towards him. "Al?" Charlie started. "What's the plan here?" she asked. Alastor turned his head to her when he looked into his small, red, glowing eyes that showed nothing but fire and anger. The red X on Alastor's forehead was also aglow. Charlie flinched and looked away from him a moment. Alastor turned his head away from Charlie and back to the building. "I want to make a deal with them first. If they decline, then be ready." His voice was deep as it was clouded with static. "Do what you need, Alastor. We're behind you no matter what," Charlie told him and walked back to Vaggie. Alastor raised his mic cane as it glowed now as well. Everyone looked at the studio and saw the lights flickering around and inside the building. If Alastor was going to get through to them, he had to show them he meant business. Showing off his power was the best way he knew to intimidate someone. Alastor took control of anything in the building he could protrude his voice out of. Leaving his mic out, he spoke. "Hand her over to me, or you'll regret everything you've done. Do this, and no one else gets injured, and we will leave. Decline, and there will be blood." Alastor wanted to make sure that if Hart was in there somewhere, that she heard him. To let her know that he was here, and he came to save her from the grasp of his enemy overlords. He just hoped she was okay and not being tortured anymore by those two. Alastor's blood still boiled as the images from the video came back to him. He was worried now how she would be after this whole ordeal was over. No matter what, though, he would take care of her. If she took a while to come back to him mentally, so be it. He would always wait for her and do anything to make sure she stayed happy. Alastor wanted to see if he could get a response from his request, but soon it seemed he got his answer. The group saw a bunch of figures run out of the building. All seemed to be holding weapons and stood in front of the building. "It looks like we have an answer," Alastor growled deeply. It was the answer he didn't want. He had already killed enough. Although, in his mind right now, it wasn't enough. He wanted to be happy until everyone was bleeding at his feet. Although, if he told Hart what he had done just to get here, she probably wouldn't be happy with him. He didn't want to do this. He then spotted Vox behind the small army of demons he had in front of him. Alastor's eyes burned and he just wanted to put a hole right through his stupid TV head. Vox held his arms out. "You want her, radio star? Come and get her," Vox challenged. Alastor felt his radio static rise at the challenge. "Vox, you shall pay." He cut the palm of his hand, and his black blood ran down his wrists, and that made his shadows come from the ground. Alastor ran towards the building, not caring how many demons there were. The group behind him hesitated a moment, but followed. They knew Alastor didn't really need the help, but if he wanted to get inside, they wanted to help him, to distract the other demons from him. Charlie had transformed into her demon form, and she was going to help her friends. She needed to use her powers to help as best she could. Vaggie was beside Charlie, her spear out and ready. Husk and Nifty were going to help their friend, no matter the risk. They'd been through scrapes before with him, and this time would be no different. They were close to his heels as best they could, but he was going too fast. They knew his blood was just boiling with anger. Kota knew this fight was upon them. He hesitated a moment. He took a breath and let himself go. He felt himself change into his demon form. Fur started to grow all over his body. He never showed anyone this side of himself. He was a rougarou. The best way to explain how he looked was a werewolf with deer antlers that formed out of his head, and they were serrated like blades. Kota was bigger than Lizzie was, and he ran faster. He ran past Lizzie as his breath could almost be seen, like a coldness was in the air. Lizzie slowed when seeing Kota run past her, her eyes in shock. She was surprised, at the same time amazed at him. She had never seen anything like him. He was radiating with power. Almost a green aura was around him. He got up next to Alastor. Lizzie just smiled and ran to catch up. Lizzie did admit that Kota was full of surprises, but this was definitely one that surprised her the most. Angel then got off of Russ's back and ran beside him. Angel had a goal in mind already. He wanted to get inside. He needed to follow Alastor if he could. Help him by telling her where Hart was. Alastor could go after her, but Angel had a focus on finding that scientist guy. He felt he was a key to this situation as well. He needed answers, and he would get them out of him. Angel would look high and low if he had to. He wouldn't give up until he found him. Alastor's shadows reached the front line of demons first. Their teeth exposed and knocked some of them to the ground. They screamed. Alastor jumped over all of them and went straight to Vox. The TV demon wasn't expecting the deer demon to jump at him the way he did. Vox didn't have a chance to dodge out of the way because Alastor summoned his tentacles to wrap around his legs to hold him. The TV demon tried to pull himself free, but it was too late as Alastor had kicked Vox right in the chest as he went to land. Vox doubled over in pain. Alastor stood in front of him and punched him in the TV screen, making it crack on the impact. Vox growled and then slammed his head forward to smack it against Alastor's. It scratched him and blood fell from his forehead, but it didn't faze him. Alastor looked at him with his eyes blazing with rage. Vox swung out his claws, extended, and managed to get Alastor in the arm. Black blood hit the ground. Alastor summoned more of his tentacles and wrapped around Vox's arms to hold him still. Alastor got close to the demon's face. "You will suffer." Alastor sounded sinister and spoke with venom. Alastor reached out with his long claws extended, piercing Vox's chest deep. Black blood started to fall around Alastor's claws. He twisted and Vox let out a scream. He wanted to rip his heart right out, although one of Alastor's tentacles then appeared and went right through Vox's stomach. Alastor took out his claws from Vox's chest roughly as he laughed, blood dripping from his claws to the ground. "My friends will have fun with you. For now, I'm going to find my way inside." "Thank you." Alastor patted Vox's head and ran past him, slamming open the doors to the studio and ran inside. Screaming could then be heard. Charlie wasn't used to fighting, nor did she want to. But in order for Alastor to get inside, she had to. She needed the help. Her hands almost hurt from punching. Luckily for her, Baggy was helping her with her spear. Kota ran into a group of demons on all fours, his sharp antlers down, like a bull going after a red cape. Demons got penetrated by his antlers, and he threw them all to the side, his eyes almost glowing with rage. He started to use his teeth and claws to make easy work of some of the demons, swinging his massive paws around and lock the demons away. Some started to run away in fear from him. Lizzie stayed close by and was smacking demons out of the way. They must be a distraction so that Alastor could get in, find Hart, and get out. She would die trying if she had to. She needed her sister back. She wouldn't go without a fight. Angel laughed as he shot some demons with his guns. He was enjoying himself. When he looked over and saw Alastor fighting Vox, he watched Alastor beat the shit out of him and then run past the TV demon and into the building. He had to go with him. He needed to get inside. Now. Angel put his gun away and quickly ran to Russ. "Russ, I need you to throw me," Angel told him. Russ punched the demon and looked at Angel Dust. "What?" Russ gave him a confused look. "Just shut up and throw me to the doors," Angel demanded. Russ said nothing else. He knew questions had to be asked later. He wrapped his snake tail around his boyfriend and then threw him at the doors of the building. Angel flew through the air, over Vox, who was still getting beat up by Alastor's tentacles, and landed by the doors of the studio. He landed on his feet and ran inside. He spotted Alastor as he had blood dripping from his claws, and a demon fell to the ground. Blood and bodies were scattered around the lobby area. Angel was almost sickened by the sight, but had to push past it. Alastor turned further into the building. "Alastor!" Angel called after him. Alastor heard his name being called and looked to Angel. "I want to help," Angel said as he got up to the deer demon. "If you want help, then stay out of my way," Alastor hissed white noise at him as his red eyes glowed brighter. Angel was not fazed by his anger because he was serious about this. "At least let me tell you where she might be." The light from Alastor's eyes dimmed a little bit at his words. "Go on," Alastor flicked his ear. "Top floor. She's probably one of Val's personal rooms. Look there." And Angel paused. "As for me, I plan to find that scientist that I saw yesterday. I think he has a connection to all this. I'm gonna try and get answers out of him." Angel took his fists and punched his palms. Alastor nodded. "Thank you, my fine fellow. Be careful." Angel nodded and ran off. Alastor turned into a shadow and went up the elevator shaft to the top floor. Alastor was glad to have Angel help him out. He remembered the scientist that Charlie mentioned to him that she heard from Angel. Alastor was surprised at the man as well, wondering if he did have a part in whatever was happening to Hart. All Alastor was worried about at the moment was he had to find her. While Alastor went up, Angel was heading down. There was a basement to the building, with about 4 levels, but it was worth a shot to find this scientist. Angel pressed down on the elevator. He tapped his foot. He was impatient. He had a job to do. To his surprise, though, when the elevator came to pick him up, he was surprised when he saw the scientist he was looking for. The scientist looked at him as his eyes went wide. "You!" Angel growled and then jumped forward at him, grabbing the wolf demon with all 4 of his hands. His hands on his white lab coat and around his throat. He held him up in the air slightly. "I know Val has you working on something and has been experimenting on Hart. If you respect your life." Angel made his 3rd set of arms come out and was holding a Tommy gun. "You'll tell me what you've been doing." The scientist dropped his clipboard in the process of Angel grabbing him. He put his arms up. Please don't hurt me. This is my life's work I've been doing. Val's just been giving me money to fund my project, plus allowing me to test on some of his customers." "What did you do to Hart? I know you've been doing something to her." Angel picked up the wolf demon and slammed him against the back of the elevator. "If you don't tell me, my friend the radio demon will get an answer out of yous." The scientist's eyes went wide when Angel mentioned the radio demon. Okay. I'll take you to my office. I'll tell you everything. Just please don't kill me," the scientist pleaded. Angel let go, putting him to the floor, but kept his gun out. "Pull anything, and your head's getting blown off." The wolf demon nodded. He reached out and touched B2. The elevator doors closed, and they went down. Alastor went up the elevator shaft and burst through the doors of the top level. He had some shadows spread out and scanned the level to look for Hart. Alastor saw doors going down the hallway. He had his shadows investigate each room. As Alastor walked down the hallway, He scraped his claws along the wall and the windows, leaving deep gashes and the sound of glass screeching. He kept his breath calm and his ears sharp. Then something hit his nose, the smell of blood. His pupils constricted. He knew the smell too well. Heart. Alastor took off in a run, his shadows close behind. Door after door he passed until the smell almost smacked him in the face. He stopped by the door, and there was a sign on it that said, "Do not enter." Underneath, there was something written in marker, PDS Experiment 00297. Alastor was angered. Were they experimenting on her? If so, for what? What was this PDS experiment? This angered him at the thought of whatever they had done to her. There was questions he would have to ask, though. He reached out and tried to open the door. It was locked. This would not stop him. Summoning a tentacle, it smacked right through the door and it split it in half. The bottom part went flying off into the darkness, while the top of the door just barely hung by its hinges. With the door open, Alastor smelled the blood filling his senses. It was so strong. There must have been so much of it. Besides the blood, he smelled the musty smell of sex that lingered in the room. Alastor carefully walked in. He saw a light switch to his left and flicked it on. What he saw almost made his heart stop. Heart was here. She was chained up to a pole in the middle of the room. The girl was naked. Blood was still on her body. Some of it had dried up, but still left streaks going down her body. It was all around her at her feet. He walked up closer to her. He saw the bruises and bite marks that covered her, marked by another, and not himself. His blood boiled at the thought. Just the state of her almost made him lose his breath. His anger rose again from her state. Those bastards, how dare they do this to her? To leave her in this condition. Alastor walked up to Heart and placed a hand on her cheek and picked up her head. She was still sleeping. Just looking at her face, all bruised with dark marks and scratches, he was hurting from looking at her. Oh, how he had failed her. He felt something fall down his face, but it was not blood. He realized it was tears. He didn't even realize he started to cry. "Heart," Alastor whispered. He put his other hand to her other cheek and put his forehead against hers. The feeling of her skin under his fingers again was almost a calming sensation. It was still smooth, even though it was marked up badly. He missed the feeling of it after 3 days of her missing. He missed the feeling of running his fingers across her skin. The sensation of the kill still lingered, but it was overpowered by just the feeling of it being relaxing. It made his mind calm from her touch, just overwhelming with love and protection. Alastor pulled his face away from her and looked down at her sleeping face. "I'll get you out of here. Don't worry." Alastor then felt a power behind him. It made his ears tingle a moment, and then a laugh followed. "Alastor, good for you to stop by." Alastor knew the voice. Valentino. Alastor's anger grew more as he turned around to face the demon. If looks can kill, Valentino would be dead a second time. "I see you want your gift back. Sorry it's not in the same condition as when we picked it up," Valentino laughed. Alastor stood in front of Heart and made shadows appear beside him, his static raised in the air. "If you value your life, you'll get out of my way," Alastor warned him through white noise. "I don't, but I'm sure you're curious what this little thing on the door means," Valentino said as he tapped his fingers on the sign from the piece of the door that still hung. "Why are you experimenting on her? What is this for?" Alastor wondered. The scientists needed a specimen. She was here. Plus, what better way to see if this little experiment works than with the love of the radio demon? Valentino answered and walked into the room. Alastor's eyes never left the blue demons. I'll let you know now, dear friend, that besides her being now tainted by someone other than yourself, she has a harder burden on her shoulders now. Valentino then let out an evil laugh. What else did you do to her? Alastor hissed. Valentino continued to walk around the room slowly. Well, let's just say that the scientist finally got a breakthrough on his experiment. He just told me not long ago the news. They were successful in achieving something that they never thought was possible down in hell. Alastor tilted his ear. What would that be? Valentino chuckled. Now where would the fun in telling you? I feel it'd be way more fun to have you find out on your own. The demon had a large grin on his face. Congrats, Alastor growled. Take her. Go ahead. I insist. Valentino smiled, but the tone of voice didn't sound passable. Alastor didn't trust him. He summoned tentacles and made them go around Valentino. The blue demon wasn't expecting him to attack and got wrapped up in the tentacles of the radio demon. Alastor walked up to him, mic cane in hand that was pointed at him as it glowed. Listen closely. Mess with her again, and I will kill you. She is my prey. His voice echoed. He made it like an announcement over the radios and speakers of the building. Don't mess with the deer, or you'll get more than just my antlers. I'll rip you to shreds. Alastor twisted his fingers, and the tentacles on Valentino twisted as well. Alastor heard a few of his bones break, and Valentino let out a scream. Yes, that's right. Scream. Show others that I mean business. The radio demon will not show mercy to anyone that gets in my way. At least from what's mine. She's mine. Alastor then stopped his small broadcast and put his mic down. He still had the tentacles wrapped up on Valentino, holding him tightly. She's mine, and always will be. He hissed one last time to the demon as he turned his back to Valentino and went back to Hart. The deer demon grabbed the chains around her and pulled. He had strength, and the chains pulled apart from around her and fell to the ground. Then he pulled the chains that held her wings together off of her. The girl was still dead asleep. She was just so drained, so she fell forward and he caught her in his arms. The fall must have woken her a little, because as he held her against his chest, he felt her hands grip his jacket. She started to squirm in his arms. Her eyes did not open as she started to freak out and thrash around, like she was fighting back an invisible force. She started to say, No, please, not again. Please. Alastor kept a hold on her, though. He tried to calm her. Hart, my dear, open your eyes. It's okay. It's me. I'm here, he whispered to her. The girl slowly stopped fighting him, her breath calming, and her eyes opened. That voice, was it him? She looked. Alastor? She questioned as tears formed in her eyes, her ears slightly up in surprise. It's me, my little wolf. I'm real. I'm here, Alastor whispered down to her. He placed a hand on her cheek to reassure her. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. All Hart did was give a small smile on her face and let tears fall, her ears falling back. She started to cry hard into him. Alastor, was all she whispered, putting her head to his chest, and she wrapped her arms around him. Alastor noticed that the girl was still not decent. That would not do. He took off his suit jacket and then put it around her shoulders. It was better than nothing. He knew she was very weak. He could feel how limp she was in his arms. "Let's go home, darling," he whispered to her. She looked up at him through tears. "Please, get me out of here. I don't want to be here any longer." She put her ears to the side. Alastor reached down and picked Hart up into his arms, carrying her bridal style. He headed towards the door. Valentino then spoke as he left the room. "You may have gotten in, Alastor, but let's see you leave." Valentino laughed and managed to snap his fingers. Alastor, now in the hallway, heard footsteps behind him fast approaching. He couldn't fight. Now that Hart was in his arms like this, he had to make a fast escape. He looked down to Hart in his arms. "Can you get on my back and hold on?" he asked her. Hart nodded. "I can." Alastor put her down on the ground fast. Hart tried her best to keep her balance and fix the jacket and put her arms in the sleeves so it didn't fall off. Alastor did something he never really told anyone about. If he needed the fast getaway, this had to work. Alastor had a deer form that he quickly went into, dropping on all fours as red fur covered him. Hart was surprised by this, and her eyes went wide. He looked so majestic. She was slowly losing balance and put her hand to the wall to steady herself. Alastor looked at her. "Well, get on." She didn't have to be told twice as she got onto his back. She was on him like a horse with her arms around his neck. Hart laid against his form, feeling the red fur under her fingers. She looked up at Alastor with a smile. "Well, this is cute," she told him, admiring the form. He ignored her comment for the moment. "Hold on!" Alastor then took off running, his hooves hitting the tile underfoot. Hart tucked her head into his neck and didn't want to look. She was just glad that Alastor was here and had saved her from this all. Something felt off for her, though. She didn't know what it was. She felt sick on top of everything else that still ached and was burning. She didn't want it to bug her right now, as all she felt was joy of seeing Alastor again. Alastor heard the demons behind him give chase. He wasn't going to get caught. Not today. Alastor had one option. He was getting to the end of the hallway and looked at the window. "Brace yourself," Alastor warned. Alastor jumped and broke through the glass of the window, sending glass shards everywhere. End of chapter 30. Yay! They finally got Hart back. Although, what did Valentino mean? This should be interesting for sure. Until next time, guys. See you around.